Unobstructed View podcast with Matt Mosley back for another episode. And I'm trying to match, I generally try to get spruced up for you guys a little more than this. And I've kind of got a little growth, a little beard growth and ball cap today, but to go with my buddy Cam Stuart. And Cam, I wanted to visit today with some breaking news from yesterday. Our friends at CBS and 247, Matt Zenitz in particular, had the news, and the news was expected to happen. Did Baylor ever put out a press conference? You remember one year?
No, still haven't heard it.
Or put out a press release. One year they were going, I think sometimes Dave says, well, I'm going to decide Sunday or Monday. And so then it's like, well, wait, do we put something out? So they have to kind of figure out how they want it. And one year, I think they announced one of the quarterbacks, and that might have been Shapen via social media, via the Baylor Twitter or something like that. In this case, it's just, I guess we're just kind of all left to go. Hopefully CBS is correct. And
they get
this will
right
happen
guy.
because we've acknowledged it. I've noticed other people that cover Baylor just like refusing to really, I guess they're just sort of thinking, hey, we all knew this was going to happen. Now,
which is a very Baylor way to go about it. Like, why are you even making it a story? Of course that is. You know what I mean? Like,
well, that's an old journalism trick.
That's
when
true. Yeah.
Somebody scoops you're like, I knew this was going to happen. And then of course
you don't even need to make an announcement.
You on the big national guys, they try to come in and like get a few more details, like, oh, I got the signing bonus. I got the first year of the contract now. Here's the contract. You got once you got to kind of like top the story or whatever. And so we're not into all that. But what we are into, and what I'd like to spend today doing, is reacting to the news. And the news was that Baylor has chosen DeQuan Finn to start at quarterback over Sawyer Robertson. They would have us believe that this was a very intense and long and close competition won by Finn. There's two things there. Either that's a whole ruse and they were just trying to kind of keep, unlike they did in the past when they made a quick decision and quarterback exit stage left and goes in the portal. I think they would love for Sawyer to stick around and compete for the job next year and be a competent backup this year. I do not think, and you can say, oh, Matt, what about this guy? What about this guy? They don't have any options other than Sawyer that'll be ready to go this year. Like Sawyer would be, I think, a pretty competent backup. And I would even be very interested to see how much better Sawyer is with a whole nother year in the program and all that. That said, I want DeQuan to be great and be incredible and all of that. But again, if this truly was a hardcore, dang it, he barely wins it. That's probably not a good sign for DeQuan Finn and Baylor because for several reasons. First of all, they paid him probably somewhere in the neighborhood. You think maybe $500,000 to $600,000. I think maybe $3 to $5, somewhere in there to come over. So they paid big NIL money, and they really needed this to work. Now, again, how does a Toledo? What I'm trying to think back is a good comp. We haven't done this in a while, Cam. I'm trying to think.
Good comp.
Well, we know what happens when because every year Notre Dame takes either the Wake Forest quarterback or the Duke quarterback. And then somebody like Oregon State will go, we kind of like the Clemson quarterback. And then that guy will go to Oregon, kind of likes him. It's like these guys get passed around. We don't have a whole lot of evidence of the great transition from like the MAC level, the MAC conference, to boom, they just hit it big time at a Power 5, now a Power 4 conference. Do any come to mind to you?
No, they don't. And I know that it's still early enough in the transfer portal era, but like you mentioned, we do have a lot of examples of those guys who take that next step within Power 5. I think of, I guess technically UCF was a group of 5. You had Dylan Gabriel go to Oklahoma and be a really good quarterback, and now he is a guy who's getting Heisman hype at Oregon. or you mentioned DJ Uiagalelei going from Clemson to Oregon State. We've seen moves like that. Will Howard from Kansas State to Ohio State, undoubtedly bigger programs, but not like this huge difference in level of competition. Because as much as I love DeQuan Finn and what he has accomplished in the MAC,
Yeah.
there's no doubt the Big 12 that's a difference. It is a faster game, and that's nothing to denigrate the MAC, but let's be honest here. So I don't know that I've seen. I guess Gabriel would be the closest because they were in the American and you had some days off, but you know what I mean?
We've seen guys from the MAC go straight, and even I think back, even Flacco was like a Delaware, and I think he actually started off at like Pittsburgh, but he obviously went on to do great things. Roethlisberger came from the MAC, didn't he?
Miami,
straight to the NFL. But as far as the guys going from those, and I'm sure somebody will call in, or I guess we don't have that. I'd like a call in. I'd like a good call in podcast. I feel like that's maybe what some people do. But yeah, some of our people will think of something. You can tweet us at Matt Mosley, MattMosley. Cam, what is yours? Real Cam Stewart.
It's at Real Cam Stewart.
Yep. Yeah, STUART. Now, what I kind of wanted to talk about is what this means now that Baylor has chosen DeQuan Finn. First of all, it would have been awkward had they not, because he was already on like the Davey O'Brien and the Golden Arm and all these watch lists.
Yeah.
And so obviously the prediction was that he was going to end up being the starter. I mean, I didn't see Sawyer end up on any of those lists. You and I hit on something on our radio show, ESPN Central Texas, recently, and I started thinking a little bit more about this. Isn't it funny, ironic, whatever you want to call it, that like
Alanis,
that Baylor functions so extremely well with Gary Bohannon, wanted to get away from it, chose another quarterback, and they kind of want to get back to it now. They kind of want what they need is escapability, and they need a quarterback that can cover up some of the warts. And the warts are young, talented, but young O-linemen. Now they do have a couple of veterans. Okay, I don't want anybody coming after us, but they do still a lot of young, fairly inexperienced O-linemen. What needs to happen now is the team. I was watching this today. I saw this pastor talking about some like weird movie called The Forge. I say weird. Maybe it'll be great, but I love that. I love that these pastors, like non-denom pastors, all have the same hand gestures, and they have the same cadence. It's really an interesting thing, and I found myself kind of doing it. But the guy was doing a lot of good hand gestures. I just feel like I could really witness to people and reach out to more people with proper hand gestures. Now, back to the task at hand, though. I think now, what I wonder is this. Is it a little weird that if we've known it was Finn all the time, we have a coach who used to talk about how important it was to get the quarterback named either in the spring or early in the fall so the whole roster could kind of get around him, rally, and move into the season? Like, it's just strange to me when you had Finn, you kind of knew this was the choice, and yet you decided to play it a different way and try to keep the quarterback competition open until the 20th of August or the 19th of August. I don't like, did that rob this team of anything? Because the truth of the matter is this, and you and I talked about this, the players may have made their own prediction going back 2 or 3 months ago, but you have to tell your team's thing as a coach. If you truly tried to represent it to your players that you had a quarterback competition going on, did you help or hurt your team? Like, would it have been better if this team had spent this last month knowing DeQuan was the man?
I think it does hurt your team a little bit in that sense, especially when you factor in that they're bringing in a completely new offense. Like, this is not anything close to what they ran last year, and I think that means that you'd rather have who your guy is, and they're all kind of on the same page, learning it together and knowing what this hierarchy is going to be. And I know that's probably the case for a couple other skill positions as well. It's more comfortable to know who your ones are, but especially the quarterback, like that is the number one position on the field. And I do find it funny that you kind of made mention of it there, but 2 years ago, this is the same head coach who was saying, we are going to announce our guy in an open quarterback competition in May. And it's probably so that Gary Bohannon can still enter the transfer portal and play that year. But we also think this is what's best for our football team. We wouldn't be doing it just so that Gary can get a fair shot that season. And I thought it quite odd that they let it play out all the way until the latter half of August with a team that is still fairly young, mostly on the defensive side rather than the offensive side, but a new offense, new guys on the sidelines and in the huddle, and trying desperately to turn around your fortunes and in the case of the head coach, keep his job. Why wouldn't you try to get something in place that everyone can rally around earlier? But then the flip side of that would be, well, Cam, if it's a guy battling for his job, as Dave Aranda is, why wouldn't he wait until he knows 1,000% who his guy is going to be? I usually go with the former in terms of, I think the coaches knew who the number one was going to be for a while now. I would have everyone on the same page. So I think it does hurt them a little bit. I don't know that necessarily takes wins off their schedule, but it could be, these first couple of weeks, there's a big learning curve with a new offense and having split reps throughout spring and fall camp.
Right. So to a point about Dave Aranda, in a way, two things are at work here. Dave has been asked, with the composition of this staff, and with him now playing the role of the defensive coordinator and calling his own defense, okay, he's been asked to fully save his own job, like hands-on more than ever. Okay, so you've got that aspect. And a quarterback from the MAC, Dave's entire career is hinging on this kid. It's his, and again, will Dave recover if he gets fired next year and get a job somewhere? You bet. But his career as a head coach completely hinges on, and this is partly the NIL world that we live in right now. Because in an old world, it's like maybe this kid could have come in as a grad transfer or whatever, but he probably just would have served out his days and go try to play the CFL or maybe have an outside shot at an NFL camp or something like that. But now, two things are at work. DeQuan Finn has a chance to become, overnight, a household name in college football. And you go, man, it's Baylor. Well, it is, yeah. But, I mean, they're not far removed from being the number 5 team in the country. They're like 3 seasons removed from that, how that season ended in 2021. So I find it, I think that DeQuan Finn, if we're trying to identify, and most people, I saw a thing today where they tried to do, Brett McMurphy did all his bowl predictions, which are kind of dumb, but kind of funny to see where everybody is going to go to a bowl before the season even starts, right? His bowl projections. But Baylor usually, because of some of the success they've had in the past, is in that somewhere. They think Baylor's going to get at least 6 wins. They were so awful last year that they were not even projected to be in a bowl, and I can't even be mad about it. It's like, well, you're going to project TCU and some of these other schools to be ahead of Baylor in the bowl, whatever. I can't argue too much about that. And by the way, the Big 12 team that's going to be in the playoff, according to them, would be Utah, and that would be the only Big 12 team projected in the and I think there was 5 SEC teams. it's, it's so ridiculous. All without one, and Texas not being one of them. I thought that was kind of a interesting thing too. But back to DeQuan. Yeah, Dave Aranda, huge hot seat this year. Put him up there with Sam Pittman. Put him up there with whoever's the big hot seat guys.
Billy Napier,
Pittman, and then Aranda. It's probably 1, 2, 3, whatever order. But if you have another conversation, and the conversation is, who is the most fascinating / mystery quarterback in the country? It's not like Blake Shapen at Mississippi State, because we kind of know, we've seen enough of Blake Shapen to kind of know what he is. And now maybe they can take him and get something really good out of him, but he's not exactly a mystery. He might be interesting. I cannot, and you may think of something off the top of your head. The guy at Kansas State does interest me, just
that was
because
mine.
he's a redheaded, funny-looking runner of a quarterback who we don't even know if he can throw. So he's a little bit Colin Klein-like, who now, of course, is the Texas A&M, because Colin couldn't throw, but Colin could run. We don't know what Avery Johnson's going to be. But I think I can make an argument that DeQuan Finn is really one of the more fascinating quarterbacks in the country, and maybe the most fascinating in the Big 12. Now, to what level is he a question mark? That's an interesting one, because I think I said to you yesterday, and maybe I was shooting a little high on this, because you certainly can't put him up there where with Shedeur at Colorado. You got to be respectful of the dude at West Virginia. The pedigree, the Cam Rising has the pedigree and all that. But the Baylor's best hope is not Dave Aranda calling some great plays. Baylor's best hope is us getting to the end of this season and being able to say that DeQuan Finn was a top 3 quarterback in the Big 12. And I am not completely ruling that out. I'm not.
That's big. This is a big quarterback conference this year, Matt. This is good.
I know. But first of all, who is, other than Avery Johnson, who we just mentioned, who is more elusive in the conference than this quarterback? Who is a better athlete?
Shedeur. But I mean, yeah,
Shedeur.
You're right. Okay. He's in the top tier. He's in the top tier of quarterbacks in this conference, just pure athleticism. Yeah.
Okay. So let's put him 3, or maybe I'll put him tied with Avery. I think we overrate Avery because of his long red hair, and he just scampers around a lot. Now he's not going to have Colin to call those delayed. I like that A&M basically paid a dude who knows like $2 million, and honestly, his best play is a delayed quarterback draw. Like that's what they do the best at Kansas State.
They love that. That's when they know it's good.
Yeah, exactly. A&M's like, we got to have that. We got to be, Wigman has to be able to run that power, that quarterback power. And we have to get that. We have to get that coach. So I'm probably putting too much on DeQuan, but when I'm trying to have one of those optimistic, feverish dreams about what Baylor might be, the reason I can almost get there is because I really like their skill players. I mean, I'm talking about I like their receivers, and I really like their running backs. Now, again, they couldn't get anything out of them last year because the O-line was struggling so mightily. The defense was horrible. And then Baylor made the decision to, like, let's bring all the coaches back on defense, even though we were like one of the worst teams in the country. But am I putting too much on the young DeQuan?
Some might say, and on base level, all things being equal, probably you are. But when you put it into context, it's probably not much more than what the coaching staff expects of him. right? I think that's what went into the decision. We talk about the biggest thing that DeQuan Finn gives is he covers up a lot of holes on the team from what we've seen in his skill set. You know, we talk about how bad the offensive line was last year, and I don't know. I can't say with any certainty how it's going to be better this year. I don't know. It could be, obviously, but right there, you've got two quarterbacks who one is way more elusive and can get out of the pocket and can extend plays, and that's DeQuan Finn. So right now, I'm just looking at the weakest unit on the team from last year, the offensive line. So the quarterback's going to be under a lot of duress. And I already know I got one guy who can really handle duress very well. And so all that to say that because of the team around DeQuan Finn, there is going to be a lot asked of him and a lot of expectations from the fans and pundits, us included, thinking that this kid was, look at the highlight tape. Nobody could tackle him in the MAC. He was so elusive. He was making something out of nothing, and he's going to need to make something out of nothing for this season, you would think, based off what we saw in 2023. So for a lot of teams that would probably be putting too much on a quarterback coming out of the MAC, even ones with the experience that Finn has. But for Baylor, I think that's just kind of the way it is right now. Yeah, you're going to have to put a lot on the kid's plate.
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome to town. Save all our butts.
Please.
That's what I don't like to say that word, honestly, because my parents never let me say it. But that was an old get. They really wouldn't let me say it. And to this day, I avoid it. I say the A word instead.
That word's in the Bible a bunch.
Yeah, my old radio cohort, that's what he always say. Rady Galloway, save all butts. But I will end it this way. I believe that if we want to identify, if you want a headline for this podcast, and if you went on Locked In and you said, hey, my buddy Mosley said something today and I want to go off on this, and I lean on my mentor a lot for this Locked On thing I do. I am going to say that DeQuan Finn is the biggest X factor in the Big 12. So there you go. I think he is the number one. I think he is the number one X factor in the Big 12. And he will be the biggest difference between either a 4-win season or a 7 to 8 win season. And we know that the difference in that is monumental. People will lose jobs over the difference in that, or get extensions. So I mean, if Dave Aranda wins 7 or 8 games, we're just all having a big, Baptist hootenanny. We're having a church picnic, and you and I may go run with the Baylor line again. There'll be a lot going on.
I might get a credential. That'd be great.
By the way, let's don't get carried away. I think the most important game of the first month and a half is that Air Force game. Okay. So I just like these X factors right now. This is kind of an X factor podcast today, the obstructed view, but that Air Force game is huge. And, I saw today who they thought was going to play. I like that Air Force is always just immediately put in that Armed Forces Bowl at Fort Worth.
Yes.
They put them in there.
Which we remember well. Yeah.
And whoever's going to play them, which I think is maybe a Big 12 team or something. It's not Baylor. It used to be. Yeah. They've made them an 18-point favorite over Air Force.
Come on.
I forget who it is.
Give Air Force some credit.
I thought Air Force had not thrown a forward pass in about 10 years. And they get in that frozen tundra that was Amon Carter or whatever they call it now. And the guy's just like, it was like Favre out there. Like, when did they start throwing the ball? Well,
I thought it hadn't been since Parcells was the coach.
I looked down at the Baylor defense, and I've never seen a group just huddled under more blankets and that kind of thing. It was a sad little crew. And I can't speak. I was huddled. I was in the press box complaining about my 3-minute walk to the car. All right, Cam, that was fun. It is the Obstructed View podcast. You can find this Spotify, YouTube, Apple, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast. Tell a friend. And I think for the Baylor family, you just don't get this anywhere. In fact, nobody's doing anything. Is anybody doing anything on the internet these days or streaming? I don't know. But it's hard to find this level of discourse and
From a couple of Baylor guys.
People that went to Baylor. You're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
That's a big difference.
People that went to Baylor University, not a couple of interlopers from the north. Okay,
yeah, definitely not from the north. Yeah.
I don't know where I don't know where anybody else is from. Whatever. One guy was
me, good old Texas boy.
Oh, Cam was red dirt, man. He's a red dirt guy.
Yeah, mud.
Red clay of East Texas. Okay. Cam, thank you. And thank everybody who's been a part of this one today. And we will see you next. And Cam, I don't want to make too many promises, but on the next Obstructed View podcast, I'm kind of leaning toward a man named Gary.
Oh,
a man named Gary.
Do not get obstructed from that.
Think Eminem Broadcasting.
That would be a fascinating. Nobody gets it that's listening right now, but that would be a fascinating podcast. Yeah.
That's right. From Oakley's. Okay. Good night, everyone. Have a great one, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Cam. Appreciate you. Good night.
We are Rogue Media Sports.